to broaden our knowledge base on this topic. So we're excited about that, and we've got a few friends in the audience too, and hopefully a couple more that are going to arrive as we go. And it's no secret we've got a bunch of traffic bottlenecks around here right now. We've got here in attendance our whole Travelers Surety underwriting team: Kevin Baird, Joy Provo, Ryan Otwell, and it's a pleasant surprise. I didn't know they were bringing the boss, but Dave Hombach is the Chief Underwriting Officer at Travelers Surety. He's here with us as well. So welcome to everybody, and I think everybody pretty much, I can see I had my eyes dilated, so I can't see very well, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows everybody here today. And so we'll keep this informal. I'm sure these guys will welcome questions as we go, but we're very appreciative of the Travelers Group to come out and talk to us about this new bond product. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Well, as Doug said, I'm Joy Provo, and I'm with the Atlanta Underwriting for Bond. And we are going to talk about a new product, and we were laughing about it earlier. It's not every day that the surety market says, hey, there's a new product out there. Most of you know,
It's never happened.
most of you know about
30 years.
our standard performance and payment bond. So this is a new product, and it's something that Travelers did develop, but it's something that we've open source to the market. So other sureties can write the bond. You have a copy of the bond in front of you. There's been some press about it. And you had a contractor client here. I'd say, what we want you to be thinking about as a contractor would be, how can I use this product in situations where maybe a standard performance bond isn't being used, that I can enhance my relationship or provide value-added services to the owner. And as producers, do you have clients, either an owner or a contractor, who could use this for value-added, and also, as a producer, potentially produce a little more premium volume? So you have an opportunity to ask questions throughout. We'll have a discussion at the end, but those are the things we'd like you to think about. This is an expedited dispute resolution bond. We're going to use EDR for short throughout the presentation. All right, this is the agenda. We're going to first go over some background, what led up to the development of the EDR product, then explain what the bond is, and then go through some of the benefits to both the owner and the contractor. And then we're going to do a bond form walkthrough, and hopefully it'll be more exciting than that sounds. And then have some discussion both on some additional benefits to it and a time for question and answer. So hopefully this will provide you everything you ever wanted to know about the EDR bond form. We're going to start out with what is performance security, really. Performance security is an assurance to the owner or the lender that there is some recourse should there be a default of a general contractor. There's various vehicles where there can be some sort of performance security, and I've got them listed here. The standard performance bond, usually we see it as a performance and payment bond, but the performance security comes through that performance bond. A parent company guarantee, simply meaning the general contractor signs that the company backs that obligation. Letters of credit in the form of irrevocable letters of credit usually are used, and along those same lines, sometimes there's a demand bond form. And retainage that's held, starting, percentage of the contract held through the end of the contract. And then it's to some degree subcontractor default insurance. And each one of these can be used individually, or sometimes you see them used in combination with each other to secure that performance security. But there's a cost to each one of these, and one of the places we're really going to focus next as we're leading up to this EDR bond form is really the irrevocable letter of credit and the risk of that irrevocable letter of credit, which I'll start shortening to letter of credit, mainly from the view of the contractor. So it's fundamentally a different risk profile than your standard performance bond, meaning really what we're saying here is with a letter of credit, the owner has the upper hand clearly throughout it. And it's because the owner has that unilateral right to draw down on that instrument, meaning regardless of the defenses that the general contractor may have, they can just draw down on that irrevocable letter of credit, take that liquidity from the contractor and hold it. So obviously that's not a situation you want to be in. And one of the things it's a true pay now, argue later situation. So you're going to not only lose that liquid security, but you're also going to start incurring significant legal expenses there, and it can really cause some problems. And now I've lost my thoughts. So,
The interest expense too.
and the interest expense. So what we're trying to do is have a little bit more of a fair and balanced situation and not having the irrevocable letter of credit. And so what we often say to our contractors is just think about that one job that was your worst job in the past 10 years. Now think about that job, whether it was a bad job or just a bad owner. Think about that job where the owner is holding 10 to 15% of the contract amount, and they can hold that over your head. Even if they don't draw down on it, it's still out of balance in terms of what the owner has over the contractor. So another thing is it is limited by the borrowing capacity. And what we mean by that is, especially in the North American market and the U.S. contractor market, unlike the European market, we're not used to putting up irrevocable letters of credit to support our bond programs. We see that in Europe. It's because they fund projects through sovereign bank situations. But here, we're used to having performance bonds being put up for a more municipal bond market supporting paying for those contracts. So what we're finding is our GC clients have more capacity to actually execute or perform these contracts and not as much capacity to actually provide that irrevocable letters of credit for it. And so those are the risks for the letters of credit. So why did Travelers develop the EDR bond form? This is just a little bit more background. And a lot of it came out of the P3 market. And are all of you familiar with what the P3 market is? So we don't have to go into it. So usually the P3 markets do require some percentage of a letter of credit for the performance security, again in that 10 to 15%. And it's usually there, it's securing the significant amount of delay damages, because usually those P3 projects are time sensitive. Now in the Georgia market, you think, we just don't have that many going on. We have the Northwest Corridor, the 400-285 project, and there's some and those really aren't pure P3 projects, and there's some other hybrids and student housing. So it doesn't seem like we have a huge market, but if you're a general contractor with a national presence, there's a lot of opportunities for these P3 markets. And so having that letter of credit requirement does hamper your ability to pursue those projects. There are demand bond forms. Like we said, Zurich and Excel both have a product, but really the demand bond form is just taking that liquid security from the bank and just switching it over to the surety. So it's really still a demand product. It still has some of those same risks. And again, the North American contractors' capacity to execute those or perform those projects was limited by their ability to get letters of credit. So our clients came to us and said, we need a product that levels the playing field with these European-backed general contractors that we're competing with. And then additionally, let's take it beyond the P3 market. There's also some private market opportunities we have out there where there is significant demand for that project to be done in a very timely manner. There's significant liquidated damages costs associated with them, and also there's a funding requirement there that we need to be able to mitigate that risk without using a letter of credit too for the same reason. And the second is this product needs to come from a highly rated issuer. So this product needs to be the equivalent from a rating agency such as S&P as the irrevocable letter of credit. And that's something that the EDR bond form does. That 100% EDR bond form is equivalent, or S&P has rated it on one of the projects as equivalent to a 10% letter of credit. So they came to us and said that they needed, and that's what, we put a team together that worked with owners, rating agencies, and an arbitration type company, and we came up with EDR bond form. So what is the EDR performance bond form? It is a performance bond. It has some of the same performance guarantees that you would see in like an AIA performance bond. But the difference is it has a very shortened period of time for a dispute resolution to take place. It can vary from contract to contract, and in our kind of our basic template, that's a 60-day time period, and we'll go through what that 60-day is. We have provided the EDR bond form for the Pennsylvania Bridges project, which is a P3 project, and the max time for resolution there was 82 days. Another unique feature to it is there is a designated third-party intermediary, and in our template it is JAMS, and I don't know if any of you are familiar. I had no idea what JAMS was until we started working on this product. And JAMS is one of the largest private dispute intermediaries, resolution companies out there. And they have a large footprint that's across the United States. And they have people with significant experience in these multi-party contracts and in construction. So they have the people and the capacity to take on this type of risk under this contract to respond quickly in those quick time frames. And I do have their web address there so you can find out more about them. But we do not require that this product be used. It's just there needs to be a party appointed at the very beginning before the project starts for this to work. The benefits of the bond form I'm going to go back. Because one of the features that isn't up here was, like I said, the ratings on this. You know, both with the P3 and the private market, the financing of it needs to have a rating from a rating agency because it can help make it less expensive as part of the financing. And again, this has been rated by S&P as equivalent to that irrevocable letter of credit. The benefits to the contractor, and one of the benefits we think is having that third-party intermediary to go ahead and get out there, get everybody on the same page so that you can open the communication and start to work through that dispute resolution. Second feature is just there is no liquid demand feature. So you don't have the cost associated with that like you would an irrevocable letter of credit. It does have options that are similar to the standard surety bond, meaning the process that we can go through to resolve disputes. And we've already talked about the rating agency a couple of times. And with that rating agency equivalent, it does give the contractor an opportunity to add value to the project owner with a lower cost of project financing. And the form can be tailored to any of the underlying contract terms. You have the basic template, but we can come in and make some tailored changes, including, we can specifically include the liquidated damages in there. And with this combined, the responsiveness and rating agency, we have had contractors use it as, this is something I can provide that my competitors can't, to give them a real competitive advantage in working with a particular owner. All right, any questions? What are the benefits of the EDR form? Some of them are the same as for the contractor. That quickness of dispute resolution is really important to them, and the third-party intermediary. And just the accelerated response time, because that's one of the biggest complaints we get on the standard performance bond is just the response time of taking that through the dispute process. And for then going from an irrevocable letter of credit versus a performance bond, there are a lot of features there, including it's 100% coverage. You have the subcontractor payment under a payment bond, which they may not have in there. So it adds more than just having that liquid security. And just the fact that it has been rated equivalently to the irrevocable letter of credit means you're not losing that benefit for the financing piece. And again, the other things are like the benefits to the contractor in that it can be tailored and open communication. So now we're going to walk through to see how this bond form works, and really in terms of how quick it responds. So the first thing is a notice to the surety of default, and we will go through the bond form, so this will become a little bit clearer. So there's two options. The surety agrees, and payment is made, or performance is made by the surety, or the surety disagrees, and that's when the surety of the obligee make an electronic filing with JAMS or the other intermediary for the expedited dispute resolution. This has to take place within 15 days. The next step is an adjudication statement is filed with JAMS by either or both of the parties, and that has to be done within 10 days. And then the parties appoint an adjudicator from JAMS on the GDC panel, and that has to take place within 5 days. And then a decision is issued by JAMS or the intermediary, and it's binding to all the parties involved on the contract, surety, principal, and the obligee. And that's another 30 days. And that's where we get the 60 days. And this can be changed, obviously. As I said, with the Penns Bridges project, it was moved to 82 days. But that is the basic template here. But additionally, the parties do have the right to appeal, but they go ahead and abide by that decision during that process. So some of the considerations is this bond form.
Can I ask a question? So what happens to the job while this is going on?
It keeps me.
You ever get that? The job continues in place, so it's not like the job goes dormant, right? That's part of the value to the owner, is that the job will continue. The owners are really driven by delivery date, prosecution of the work. That occurs while this is in place. Normally when this dispute arises, the two parties decide to stop work, they start pointing at each other, arguing, fighting, whatever they're going to do. This doesn't allow that to happen. The job continues to prosecute.
So is that a contractual provision? Everybody agrees on Friday?
Yep.
It's in the bond form. You'll see it in the bond
Yep.
form.
The time frame is contractual. Yes?
Is there any discovery in this process between the parties as to the nature of the dispute?
That's got to occur in that second line there, like the 5-day window and then in the 30-day period. If they're going to do that, they have to. That's got to be running simultaneously. So think about it as basically two wheels running at once.
Yeah.
There's a wheel spinning in the background, the legal side of this, but they have to get that done within this time frame.
And that was a perfect tee up for the next slide. Thank you for that. So the considerations, really, because of that quick time frame, number one, there needs to be the right owner for this project. And we've already discussed, P3 is a good starting point, but also, it needs to be a private, usually it's a private owner because there's not already a standard performance bond requirement. And there needs to be some compelling liquidated damages or time frame for getting this done. Second is, the contractor really needs to have some controls in place. They need to have their own legal team, and also to know when they need to go outside of their company to seek assistance, and quite frankly, documenting. And they have to understand that with this compressed time frame for this dispute resolution, you're going to immediately start incurring some significant legal costs, and just be prepared for that. And it's going to use up some of your field resources. So you want to make sure that that's something that's available in your portfolio and in your business to be able to take care of this as well. And of course, the staff needs to be trained on the EDR bond form and the claims. And on the traveler side, we do provide a designated claims person when we write this bond too. So there's some of that response time on our part and the assistance that we give.
So with the bond that we write in this case, there is a designated claim person for travelers assigned to this bond. to the job. Owners love that feature, because if you ever had to make a claim under a surety bond, it goes into this mysterious labyrinth called the black box, and you wonder how it gets out, who's going to handle it, who's responded to what and when. Here's a designated person. They go immediately to work when notified. The owner can have a relationship with them. That's the part, they love that a lot.
But everybody's got to work as a team for this to work. You know, the owner's got to be in, we have to be in, and the principal has to be in, and we all have to be ready to respond. The owner, the contractor, and the surety. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Dave. And also, you know, one of the things we were talking about the rating agencies, and I didn't mention it, is one of the reasons that the bond form that we have out in the market was rated equivalent to the irrevocable letter of credit was because of the financial strength of travelers. And, you know, we do have competitors with similar financial strength, but certainly if you don't have a surety with that financial strength, you're not necessarily going to get that same rating. It really takes a strong surety to back into.
Good, you do this part. Okay, where's the...
Down.
Okay. That part, I don't want you guys to dismiss. We actually got this bond form rated by S&P. Because in some of these intricate structures around the P3, what they want is a reserve available to the developer to handle delays on the project, to handle unforeseen conditions, to handle change orders. They want to know that there's more money there than just the original GMP on the job. So that's where the letter of credit requirement came from at its outset. Our bond sits in lieu of that because they consider, based on the strength of the balance sheet, the responsiveness to claims, that it's the same as if it was there.
Down.
Down? Oh, that's down. Okay, there we go. All right, so you have the form sitting in front of you. I don't want to read through all of this, but whatever you see highlighted in red and underlined, pay particular attention to that. This is pretty much standard language. But the whereas, so again, these are all customizable. So it's not, that's the only form there's ever going to be on the street. So you can change it as needed based on the project. Penal sum can be flexible, or sometimes owners, I don't really know why, but they seem to want something less than 100%. Again, principal shall through the geek formula. So this is all pretty much standard language, but provided, however, upon mechanical completion, project thereof, or price, the subject of penal sum should solely cover liquidated damages and warranty obligations. This is not in standard forms. This is spelled out explicitly so that the owner knows that they have coverage for liquidated damages and warranty obligations. Now, there's a standard implied warranty obligation under any payment performance bond we have, but liquidated damages are usually not specifically called out in a payment and performance bond.
The step-down provision there, too, is something that's not always, not completely standard, but it's one of those that, as we've done, kind of talked with folks, being able to do that and reduce it by percentage or however they want to do that. Is
Well, explain what is step-down provision?
So the step-down provision, basically we're talking about as work is performed or as certain sign-offs are made, especially on these big, larger projects. Even on some of the design build items, as we get to certain parts in the contract, they're reducing the liability, the penal sum on the contract. One example, kind of a simple example is the pre-con. You get through, it's a $500 million job, and you've got 10% of it in pre-con. Getting through that pre-con phase is a perfect time to take a step down, and then there's $450 million exposure left out there. But certain benchmarks on the projects, this allows for that. Because the other thing about it too, when you think about a big highway job or a big bridge job, you get 2 lanes open and they start going, and you start working on the other 4 lanes. I mean, those things are in place. So this allows for that to say, hey, this part is complete, and you can get the warranty and things like that clicking on it, versus waiting another 18 months for the next 2 lanes across the bridge going. So this allows for some of that flexibility, and it's still more than the owner's getting by just doing an LLC, because there is still the full performance payment coverage out there.
But specifically, this step down is for mechanical completion. Here, you can have a defined percentage that it's reduced, that will cover that warranty obligation and liquidated damages if it doesn't get to final completion.
One of the things I want to bring to your attention here is, again, specifically include liquidated damages and warranties, but also the waiver of fraud defense. That's a pretty important item, and that's something that we've got from feedback from owners about. Waiver of fraud was very important to owners, and that's I think that's really one of the telling. When owners read this, they absolutely like that. Fraud by any person other than the obligee seeking to recover on this bond. Okay, here we start to get into how this works in the form of the bond itself. Again, the surety must act within 15 days. How many of you have ever, I probably know the answer to this, but how many of you have had clients involved in claims under surety bonds, either subcontractors or they themselves have been hit with a claim? You know, okay, you guys have all had that, right? So what's the single biggest characteristic of that process that was an annoyance to them and to you? Takes forever, right? Time, right? And in today's construction, if you think about it, the velocity of construction today is vastly greater than it was 10, 15 years ago. The amount of work that contractors put in place today vis-a-vis what they used to do is extraordinarily different. So time is not something that there's a lot of. This bond gets at that. Requires performance by date certain. 15 days. And then you have the traditional claims bond. So when Joy was talking before about, this has all of the things a traditional payment and performance bond you've come to understand is in one. It's still here. This just talks about the time frame in which those things are brought to bear. This is a very important, again, if you just read the red, that the surety, obligee, and principal are all joined at the hip, if you will, in the process, with the goal of continuing the job, to resolving their issues, and again, in the end, they reserve the right to argue about it. Okay, again, in this language here, you'll see the single point of contact is known up front. It talks again about the level of cooperation between principal and surety and the owner. Again, we call it concierge claim service.
That means if the subcontractors, you'll handle that portion of it? You're bonding the subs in
The way this is structured right now, so I've had that before. So would a sub ever provide a general contractor this form? I can't never say never. Its original use is at the prime contractor level. At some point it may come to that. We haven't really, I don't think we contemplated doing it with subcontractors yet. But I couldn't rule it out either.
Well, you just talk about a P3 project, it might be $200 million, you might have a $50 million grading contract.
Oh yeah, no, the subs would be a part of the, if the claims, think about all the payment bonds. So this bond will respond in a normal manner to subclaims under it. It's not just with the owner, but a subclaim with a failing general contractor is an issue for the owner as well, right?
So getting back to that, we did revamp our subcontractor bond form that we provide to our clients to try to, it doesn't look like this, but it does try to hasten that time period for response, and we can always go through that too.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit at the end. So we do have a remedy for that particular issue.
Go back real quick, Dave. The last little bullet here about avert claims which trigger the obligation. This kind of goes back to what David was talking about earlier about getting everybody introduced kind of at the beginning and agreeing, knowing who the parties are. In your typical AIA, there is the pre-default conference type of language that's in there. It isn't explicitly said in here, but the kind of idea is to get everybody on the same page so they can communicate without actually having to have a claim. If there is something pending or something going on, before going all the way through this process, all the parties know each other and can try to avert getting there.
Yeah, so really what Kevin's talking about is we've set up a mechanism to deal with claims, but the way we structure this is you almost don't, we want to try to avert them, right? If we can have, by virtue of the cooperation between claims attorney, owner, and principal, avert that whole process because everybody's talking, that's what this particular paragraph is all about. You read again in red. These are the triggers for something to occur downstream. The obligee is honored and continue to honor and perform all of its obligations. The obligee is issued a notice of default. The principal is and continues to be in default of the principal's obligations under the contract. Now, in most cases, when owners and contractors argue with each other, that's the biggest point of dispute. Are you in fact in default? And if so, under what terms of the contract? Okay, so this is how the dispute resolution process works. Again, if you read it in red, emphasize on speed, project completion, and finality, but the perform their obligations under the contract. So if you go down about 2/3, okay, so the parties acknowledge any decision rendered in the DRP, which is the arbitration process, will be binding during the completion of the contract, but subject to appeal. Principal and obligee shall continue to perform their respective obligations under the contract during this time period. Again, that's one of the key elements of it, that you may decide you don't like each other or you're going to argue about every point in the contract, but you're going to keep working. And again, JAMS is used in here because that's the organization that we chose to do this with, but there's other options for that. That doesn't necessarily have to be written in stone. This covers exactly how that process works. I think it's pretty interesting here, the way they wrote this, is you see the 3 questions that this is the charge of the arbiter. This is what they're empowered and obligated to do. Is the principal in default? Has the obligee complied in all material respects with the obligations set forth? And is the surety liable to perform under the contract? So these will all be findings. But nothing greater than that. So we have a written decision after 30 days. It's binding and enforceable through completion of the principal's obligations. Again, they retain the right to appeal in the end. Payment will be made immediately. And that part down there, admissible in subsequent proceedings. So if they decide at the end of the project to appeal and take it to a full judiciary hearing like we're used to seeing, all of this stuff is admissible and all that. So to answer your question, this will be a part of the discovery for the trial that would occur after the fact. So really at the end, what this is it's certainty of outcome, which owners want. Certainty of outcome and prosecution of their work. Now, they may not like the result, but they have the ability to appeal it at the end. But that's what this bond does that no other product in the marketplace, a standard payment and performance bond, is not doing today. The AIA form or any of the other standard forms that our clients are used to using, don't bring these into play. So as you're sitting out here and you look at the clients you represent, both the contractors and some owners that you write insurance coverages for, or you do risk management for them, this is different. If you think about it, an owner takes a 10% letter of credit. right? That's their performance security under a project. Their contractor fails. They now have 10% of the contract value they can draw down on, and what are they going to do with it? Right? Are they going to pay the subcontractors on the job? They're going to have to re-procure the work. The project is going to be terribly delayed. Cost escalations are going to occur. And yet an owner thinks a 10% letter of credit's a good deal. Right? They haven't had one fail with a 10% letter of credit, and then they found out how good the deal was. This is a much better deal. So that's what we're going to sell corporate America, because really at the end of the day, our clients have asked us to do this because they get hit with a letter of credit requirement. As a surety, as an industry, and for you, our sales force, we're leaving so much money on the table today because corporate America is not buying our product. The private sector is not buying our product like it should. Why is it? Because in their minds, it doesn't respond. It doesn't do what they think it should do. Now, their notion of what it should do may be warped a little bit, but they basically get it as an owner. They want delivery, certainty, budget. That's all the things that they want. This gets at that. Right? So we have charged ourselves with, we're trying to sell this to different owners around the country. So if you come across an owner that's looking for a project solution in their risk management program, this is a bond they should consider.
What's the, you may have this later, and I'm an agent, so of course I'm going to ask this, but, and you may not be able to tell me definitively, but, what's sort of the thought process on the price of this versus a traditional P&P bond? And I realize it's driven by the credit strength and all that,
Yeah,
but you're going to have superior credits generally before you're going to want to do it.
I told Kevin you were going to ask that question.
Yeah.
So he's ready.
I guess the way we're looking at it is it's probably along the lines of like when we charge design. Well, let me back up.
So there's a surcharge idea behind it.
There is a little bit, but the idea though too is that most of these types of jobs are going to be design build anyways. Sureties have a design build rate, so it'd probably fall along those lines. I don't see us going out creating a completely specific rate for this bond form that hasn't really.
Well, we have not decided to rate it any differently. So if we wrote one tomorrow, we would write the account rate on that bond form. Now, that doesn't mean that at some point we may figure out that we probably ought to adjust our rates for these things. But as of today, we have not made the decision whether or not we're going to bump this. And again, to Kevin's point, most of the projects that this will be used on have some sort of design build element anyway, so we'd rate it design build anyway. So it would come with a normal design build rate. But as of yet, we do not have a separate rate filing that addresses this obligation. Yes, sir.
Have you set a floor yet on the size of the contractor or the size of the contract that you would sell this to, that we would present this to?
We have not. More of where our floor is the characteristics of the firm involved. Like Joy's slide up there that had, what kind of characteristics are we looking for in the clients we want to write this for? A client that's a general builder that does $25 million a year, he works in a local marketplace, this is not designed for them. Right? It just doesn't. They don't have the level of sophistication or the support mechanisms in place to keep up with this. It's not there. So we don't necessarily have where that floor is. You basically take them one at a time. Okay?
Have we done any in Georgia yet?
Whereas the one project that's out there is that the Bridges project up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's the one that we have it on right now, is the Bridges project.
It has been proposed, but the actual bond written is just the one.
But in that case, you had to get the public transportation department to go along with the bond form, right? Wasn't that a public?
Yeah.
P3.
Yeah, it was a PennDOT, so it was a Pennsylvania DOT. Yeah.
So the last piece here is what we call the advanced payment rider. And this came about more from conversation with some of our industrial contractors that do power plant, pipeline, wireline type of jobs where there's a huge mobilization aspect to what they need to do. And this could be actually applied to not just industrial job, but think about anything that needs to be front-loaded with equipment, materials, big electrical jobs, 10 10 years ago where people were stockpiling copper kind of things in anticipation of the fluctuation in the market. Things like that, generators are always a big ticket item, right? So what this does is allows for it allows for the owner to pay some mobilization costs up front in a big chunk. And with that, there is an obligation, obviously, for the contractor to use that money specifically for the mobilization and get the advance and the money. So really what this does is it just puts everyone on the same page saying, hey, we're going to use this for mobilization. And the industrial guys, they felt that this was important to sell it to the owner because a lot of times what they were noticing was the LOC that they were getting required to post was basically equivalent to what their mobilization costs were. It was in that 10 to 15% range. So that's why they said, hey, you give me something like this, I can sell it on an equivalent page to get this coming up front. The other piece of it too is it addresses the concerns of the misuse of the funds. Oops, down. So for the owner, for the contractor, it is their swift access to cash, getting that all up front. There is a dedicated sub-limit on here, so they chop that off, so it's going to be this actual dollar amount. The other nice thing about this too is if there is a dispute, it refers back to the Schedule A, and the next one talks about Schedule B, but as far as here's the process that needs to go through if they feel like the owner or the contractor is misusing the funds. And it also allows for we talked about the step-down provision earlier. Under this, you can reduce the bond penal sum after mobilization is used up and taken care of. So however they want to word that in their contract, whether it's delivery material to site or once set that benchmark of this piece is installed, they can draw down the penal sum of it. Again, it talks about, and if there is a dispute, it goes back to Schedule B, which was the whole dispute resolution piece of the bond form. We still have the same 15-day response that needs to happen, so they can sell it but discuss it in a manner that this is no different. This is just a rider that's going to follow the same provisions as the EDR bond form in general.
Can that rider be used independently of your EDR bond form?
And just with the normal like AIA 312?
Right. Or some version of it?
I think you could probably do something like that. I mean, yeah, version of it, possibly. This one, obviously, since it's specifically flash right here.
It points back to
It
that.
points back to the other
Yeah.
one, so I don't think you can uncouple them yet. I don't really think.
We have to manuscript something.
Yeah, we can always manuscript just
Yeah.
a standard advance payment bond form, just as a standalone obligation if you wanted that, but yeah. And remember, some of this stuff is for like long lead time items for our industrial guys where General Electric is not going to go build a new generator or switch gear or anything else unless they have all or half the money up front. There's not. So that's part of why these big upfront loaded jobs go to, because the guys aren't going to go build the equipment until they have money up front to go pay it. So they have to do this, and this indemnifies the owner that in fact that money wasn't sent for some other job or to build something else not intended for their job.
Cummins for a while was requiring some very significant deposits on generators. A few years ago, it's probably been 5 or 6 years since they were doing that, but there was a big demand for like the big generators you see like in the hotels, and they were taking orders, but they were getting 25-30% deposits on these things up front, and contractors are having to flip the bills on them. So, I'm talking about getting the long lead time items. So where does this provide competitive advantage? Definitely kind of hammered on it. Any project that's requiring an LOC or an ILLC. Don't want to tie up the contractor's actual bonding capacity or just their financial capacity from the company with that. P3 project's pretty good. Definitely anything that's time sensitive, it keeps things moving. We've talked a lot about that being for a bridge or a large P3 or something, but I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a casino that's got major private financing, and they want those doors open by New Year's Day kind of thing. Some of those types of those projects would definitely have an interest in this. Present delay damages. Oh, on this point here, just the ability for the contractors to work through it, the delay damages that potentially could be out there, especially from a liquidated or actual. We don't necessarily address actual in here. It tries really hard on liquidated damages, but the ability to avoid those, especially these larger jobs, can be quite significant anyways. Again, the project delay. Data centers are popping up everywhere and will continue to pop up. That seems to be become a never-ending source of construction going on right now. Everybody's expanding. And those things have a major quick turnaround. I mean, I think Google actually has, I was reading this not too long ago, I was talking to some folks that just built a big one up in Wyoming, and they actually had, in the specs, they know the exact footprint that they want, and each footprint is tied to an exact amount of days to get the things up and running. So the complexity of the contracts and the demands on the contracts are really beginning to get a little bit more detailed and a little more crunchy on the contractors. And then, obviously, owners that might traditionally require performance payment bond are not doing it. This is a great way to kind of get them to, again, use the product and provide them really more security. So good markets. Talk about P3s, power plants, oil and gas pipelines. A lot of lead time with the material. There is some potential there. They have there's a project in Virginia where originally the owner wanted a $700 million ILC posted. They dropped that down. I have it on my notes here. They dropped it down to $100 million with the performance and payment bond, and then the discussions going on is a $50 million LOC if they use the EDR bond. So there was a pretty significant drop from the original $700 million down to 50 using this in conjunction with still some LOC. And higher education, another one. I don't know if anybody saw recently, I believe it was in the AGC, the University of California, Merced, is doing a $1.3 billion expansion to their campus. They're expecting their campus to grow by about 20 to 25,000 students over the next 3 years. So, I mean, it's a massive, massive campus job going on in one shot. And I don't believe we got in there on that one to discuss it, but as these campuses are expanding, higher ed is definitely going to be a market that doesn't always, especially private schools, don't always bond. So another place to look at it. And with that, any questions?
It seems like a 30-day window for the arbitrator or the adjudicator to make a decision is kind of short, because these are going to be real big, complex projects, design build, like the Atlanta Falcons Stadium, and if there's inevitably it's probably going to be an argument over a design problem, and you're bringing in the underwriter on the design liability, the professional liability, and they're going to muck it up a little bit. And it seems like 30 days is just not enough time to reach a decision on something like that.
Well, and that's one of the things where you look at the Pennsylvania job, they stretched that out to 82 days for the total time. So I don't know where they stretched that out. But it's flexible. They might sit there and say, okay, we'll do it in 45 or 60 days.
You got to bring in experts and do
Sure,
investigations.
So it is variable, John. So it depends. So JAMS gave us the feedback based on the complexity and what PennDOT was saying they wanted from us. We mutually agreed that we extend that time frame, and the extension is principally in the arbitration component.
And
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just saying, the other thing too is, keep in mind too, the contract is going to, this is going to obviously follow the contract. So if there's a serious design flaw, and they're sitting there, they got to go back to the engineers. If the work needs to stop, it can stop. This doesn't mean you just got to kind of plow through the issue and hope everything's still standing at the end of the day. There is flexibility in this to allow that to keep going.
And an unrelated question is, the contractor's indemnity obligations to the surety the same under this kind of bond? If you spend some money on this resolution process, and contractor's gonna have to pay you back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll act in this exact same fashion as a normal performance and payment bond. It's just gonna be that much quicker. So, I mean, realistically, I mean, if the arbitrators come back and say, Mr. Contractor, you owe $200,000 back to this job, or to this owner for whatever it is, they should, I mean, it's on them obviously to pay it first, but we get called. It says sure he's going to step in and do it, but we don't care where the check comes from if it wants to come from that. Anything else? So this, one other thing, everybody mentioned this at the beginning, or maybe you did, Joy, but this is not, this isn't solely a Travelers product. We don't have a patent on this. This is something for the market. This is something we want to try to get out, encourage people to, throw rocks at it. Help us understand how we can make it work for other things in the market. There are some good things in here that don't necessarily have to apply to a large P3 project. It can be, that smaller, might be a $25 million job, but if all the pieces fit between the contractor sophistication and the right owner, it's a pretty good form to use.
How does it compare to Subguard in responding to claims?
Given that it's more aligned towards the general contractor, the prime contract, it's tough to say. I mean, I think Subguard.
Well, I would tell you,
I never
John,
go
that
back
the
to-
Subguard product is, while it was known originally to be very expeditious, it's gotten to be very much like a payment of performance bond claim anymore. Just ask your clients that have it, and when they submit a claim to Excel, Arch, Zurich, the money's not coming back in 24 hours, right? Sometimes it takes a long time. They underwrite it effectively the same way now, almost as a payment of performance bond claim. So it's very responsive from the standpoint of when a decision will be rendered on a dispute. The normal ebb and flow of a payment bond claim and all that stuff, in the first 15 days, if we all decide, hey, we're on the hook, you never even get to this. It just, the surety will give a response in 15 days. And that's about as fast as it happens out there.
If it's just a typical situation where the general contractor gets in financial trouble, on other projects, and now all of a sudden it's collapsing.
Right.
And you agree that, he's not responding, so you're gonna step in just like a regular performance bond and fund the contractor, or?
Yeah. So in that 15-day period, we make that resolution, John. We then adhere to the normal surety options under a failed contractor. So we can fund the guy, we can tender a replacement contractor, or we can relet the work. I mean, so the normal things that we would do. But within 15 days that the surety's in.
Yeah.
And we will begin immediately working.
We're really battling more the letter of credit aspect of, all these international guys are used to doing that. They're coming to America, everybody's saying, well,
They're selling owners.
15% letters of credit.
Yes.
And Americans are like, what?
Yeah, that's backed by their government.
Yeah,
Well, and
right.
that's the thing too, is having that dedicated person was something dedicating the resources to this and have that name on the bond. If things start getting sideways, we expect them, everybody's got to be on the same page, so we expect them to pick up the phone and call. And just like we would do the same thing. So there does have to be some cooperation between all the parties. Really upfront and understanding.
I think it's cool that y'all have gotten out, taking some leadership on this. I think over time, and I'd love to see where, this concierge claim service maybe gets filtered down to the normal product someday. Maybe that's an enhancement that we could, that we could bring, y'all could bring to the table that would actually enhance the value of the typical one. Because I think it's a great,
Yeah, and at this point, that is something that we can't provide to our larger contractors, but it's not really geared towards the subcontractor. It's a service to our clients.
I hope we don't have enough bond claims out there that need it.
That's right.
But you're right, but part of this is raising the bar on the industry, because the industry has got to respond to the needs of its constituents.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
otherwise, we're going to at some point cease to exist.
Right.
And we can't let that happen. I mean, we're not going to let that happen. So we have to put something out there that's much more responsive to the needs of the owners, or else they're not going to buy our product.
One thing, just going back to your question about your response on the SDI, Joy touched on it earlier, our kind of revamped subcontractor bond form that we won't get into. We actually were going to talk a little bit about today, we just weren't sure on time. So we cut it out, but we can come back out and talk about that. But the idea of that bond form is it provides some very specific response times within it, and the dispute resolution.
It's geared towards having a bond form compete against the
SDI.
SDI product.
Yeah. So,
And there's the ability for the contractor to be more involved in managing their claims.
Right.
Right? Because we all know today, I think of the skill set that the general contractor community has today that it didn't have 10, 15 years ago, is what I call, most of our big GCs now have built triage units. They have their own intensive care unit inside the firm. What they do is they drag subs along instead of defaulting them, shooting them on a job site, because they found that they cannot defend the schedule if they have subs that are going to fail on their job. A critical path subcontractor, MVP sub on a fast track job, they cannot afford to have one of them fail. They just can't. So if they're going to fail, they find out ways to prop them up and drag them through to get to the finish line. They want to be reimbursed for the cost of that intensive care. And they probably have a right to be reimbursed for that. So this product is beginning to get at the ability of the sureties to step in and say, you know what, you're right. We've also found that probably that's a cheaper alternative than to allow the sub to fail and then we go in through and clean up the mess in the old traditional manner. So this is a cheaper alternative. It keeps the job going. That's what the generals liked about SubGuard, right? They could manage their own claims. They could work with the sub, send bills to the SDI carrier, and get reimbursed in some reasonable manner. That's what this bond form is all about.
it explicitly states in there that the owner, the obligee can continue to do work and work through the, if they need any work that they complete that's found on behalf of the sub. Yeah,
That's compensable under the bond.
Yeah.
We applaud for that.
Well, we always want to bring something, keeping you wanting more. We're happy to come out with
So
that.
it took you 130 years in the industry for one change, now we have two in 2 weeks.
Well, these are really two big issues that we've rolled out throughout, kind of the second half of this year to really try to get the push going, so.
And again, if you think about all of the opportunity that we've lost in the sub bonds that we no longer write because of this.
Well, we think about it all the time.
I mean,
Every time we write one of those possibilities.
this is part and parcel of where you live, and I get that. So, but as an industry, that's all gone. We claw that back because of the changes that are going on in that space as far as SubGuard, the whole issue there.
For sure.
So we would like to claw that back. And many of our general contractors, if they had a responsive product, think about it, under a SubGuard, they have a deductible every time they have a loss. That's out of pocket. They don't have an out of pocket with a payment or performance bond. That's not lost on them. Right? They just don't want to buy the product because they don't want the brain damage of having to go make a
Well,
claim.
they've got to
on
build
their
an
subcontract.
infrastructure to do all the underwriting too. Let's not forget about that. That's got a real cost.
And to the benefit of the subs, they have the ability to kind of control the process a little bit more in the bond form. It doesn't, cut it straight down the line. Once you're defaulted, you're out. They have the ability to actually kind of work this out a little bit more.
Well, and the sub frustration, in fact, I just heard this from somebody the other day, that they spend all their time going through all these different pre-qual systems at all these different GCs. Nobody's using a uniform pre-qual.
Right.
And so they're constantly having to, go through
They're
different
just-
portals and whatever and update their information. And it's, that's a complaint from the sub community.
Yeah.
They'd rather give them on because they're tired of having to do help
And
with all the underwriting.
there are companies who are trying to have that portal that everybody can use.
Right.
That just hasn't taken off because everybody wants their own.
And it's not standard.
Thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they're trying to standardize it, and trying to get the subs to say, hey, I'm part of this community and I've already got the information, I can send it to you, but every GC wants a little bit different information too.
Right.
And so it's hard to standardize that, I think. Right. So we left you with a expedited dispute resolution bond sell sheet, little two-pager. And, we're not under the illusion that, you're going to send us opportunities for 50 of these in the next month. But, we do think that there's real opportunities for, this bond to be used, and potentially we're going to see some elements of it as it works through the market, show up in other places. You can have subcontractors who might be working under it. And so hopefully it'll just be something else in another quiver, or another arrow in your quiver so that you can sell it. So if you have any questions about how to use it, or if you have a GC who has a group of people who would like to learn more about it, we're also certainly able to go out and do that for you as well.
Or an owner that wants to discuss it,
Yeah.
we would love to come out and sit down with an owner.
Yeah.
And help you sell them on this. I mean, seriously, we would love to do it. In the past, we relied on our general contractors to some extent with a new initiative to do that. And we found that while their heart may be in it, they're still a general contractor working with an owner to acquire work and to prosecute it. And their job is not to sell a product to the owner, unless, in many cases, this is the thing that gets them out of a letter of credit, and they can provide a normal standard payment performance bond with these special bells and whistles in it, and it saves them money and they can differentiate themselves, but we don't want them to be the sales force. They've told us they can't sell it. Their relationship with the owner would prevent them from doing that, so we're going to do it. So every chance we get, every owner we can get in front of, we would love to do it about selling them on this. So if you have some owners that you represent that you think would love to use this on their work in the future, vis-a-vis some other alternative, either they're Bear or they're trying letters of credit or they use SDI or anything else, we'd love to sit down and talk to them.
Keep in mind.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yes.